Joseph is brought out of confinement so quickly that he has only enough time to shave, change his clothes, and prepare to stand before Pharaoh. He enters the room as a Hebrew slave summoned from confinement. Before the audience is over, Pharaoh will place his own signet ring on Joseph's hand, dress him in fine linen, and declare that only the throne will stand above him in Egypt. The distance between those two moments seems very short when Genesis chapter 41 is read by itself. The distance between them in Joseph's life was not short at all. He was 17 when his brothers sold him, and he was 30 when he entered Pharaoh's service. Roughly 13 years lie between the special robe his father gave him and the linen garments Pharaoh placed on him. Genesis chapters 37 through 41 show us how that change happened, but they do not give us a formula for personal advancement. Joseph's path runs through favoritism, family hatred, enslavement, sexual pressure, false accusation, responsible work, forgotten promises, and finally a national emergency. The repeated statement holding the account together is not that Joseph understood the plan. It is that the Lord was with Joseph. We begin in Canaan, in a household that already carries years of straying. Jacob, who is also called Israel, has 12 sons through Leah, Rachel, Bilhah, and Zilpah. Joseph is Rachel's first son and the older brother of Benjamin. Genesis says that Israel loves Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph is the son of his old age. That preference is not hidden inside Jacob's feelings. He gives Joseph a distinctive robe that everyone in the family can see. The familiar phrase, "coat of many colors," comes from one traditional rendering of a rare Hebrew expression. Other translations describe it as an ornate robe or a robe with long sleeves. We cannot reconstruct the garment with certainty, but its function in the story is clear. The robe publicly marks Joseph as the favored son. His brothers see the unequal love behind it, and Genesis says they hate Joseph so deeply that they cannot speak peacefully to him. Joseph is 17 and works with some of his brothers among the flocks. He brings their father a bad report about them, though Genesis does not tell us whether the report was unfair. Jacob's favoritism wounds the household, Joseph's words add to the tension, and the brothers remain responsible for the violence they choose. Then Joseph dreams. In the first dream, the brothers are binding sheaves in a field. Joseph's sheaf stands upright while their sheaves gather around it, and bow down. His brothers understand the implication immediately. They ask whether he truly expects to reign over them, and their hatred grows. The second dream expands the image. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars bow down to Joseph. This time Jacob rebukes him and asks whether the family will actually bow to the ground before him. His brothers are jealous, but Jacob keeps the matter in mind. The two dreams point in the same direction, though Joseph is not told when or how they will be fulfilled. Nothing in the dreams explains the road to Egypt. That is important because biblical promises can be remembered too neatly after we know the ending. From the beginning of the story, the reader has heard that Joseph will be elevated. Joseph has not been given a map from the dream to its fulfillment. The next movement appears to carry him in exactly the opposite direction. His brothers take the flocks north near Shechem, and Jacob sends Joseph from the valley of Hebron to check on their welfare. Shechem is not a casual destination for this family. Earlier violence involving Jacob's sons had made the area dangerous, which may help explain a father's concern. When Joseph arrives, the brothers have moved farther north to Dothan. A man in the fields directs him there. The brothers see Joseph before he reaches them and begin planning his death. They call him the dreamer and propose throwing him into a pit, then telling their father that a wild animal killed him. Their words reveal what they are trying to destroy. Killing Joseph would not be enough. They want to see what will become of his dreams. Reuben, the oldest, persuades them not to shed Joseph's blood. His private intention is to return later, pull Joseph from the pit, and restore him to Jacob. Even so, Reuben does not openly end the plot. The brothers strip off Joseph's robe and throw him into an empty cistern. Genesis adds that there is no water in it, removing any doubt about immediate drowning while leaving him trapped below. Then the brothers sit down to eat, a brief and disturbing detail because Joseph's distress does not interrupt their meal. Later in Genesis, the brothers themselves will remember that they saw the anguish of his soul and heard him pleading with them, but they refuse to listen. A caravan appears on its way from Gilead to Egypt, carrying aromatic goods for trade. Genesis uses the terms Ishmaelites and Midianites as it describes the traders, and readers have long discussed the precise relationship between those labels in the account. The narrative does not stop to resolve every trading role. Its central claim is plain: Joseph is taken from the pit, sold for 20 pieces of silver, and carried toward Egypt. Judah presents the sale as an alternative to murder. There is no profit in killing their brother and concealing his blood, he argues, so they should sell him instead. He even appeals to kinship, saying that Joseph is their own flesh. The words soften the method without correcting the evil. Joseph remains alive, but his brothers turn his life into merchandise and send him away as a slave. Reuben returns after the sale and is horrified to find the pit empty. The brothers then use Joseph's robe to deceive Jacob. They slaughter a goat, dip the garment in blood, and ask their father to identify whether it belongs to his son. Jacob recognizes it and reaches the conclusion they intended. He believes Joseph has been torn apart by an animal, puts on sackcloth, and refuses to be comforted. The brothers do not directly say that Joseph is dead. They arrange the evidence and allow their father to name the tragedy himself. That form of deception is painfully familiar within Jacob's family. Years earlier, Jacob used a young goat and his brother's clothing to deceive his own father. Genesis does not state a simple rule of punishment here, but the return of garments, goats, and a father deceived by his sons is difficult to miss. Chapter 37 closes by holding two locations together. Jacob mourns in Canaan as though Joseph has gone down to the grave. Meanwhile, Joseph has gone down to Egypt, where the traders sell him to Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Jacob believes the story has ended. The reader knows Joseph is alive, but being alive in Potiphar's possession is not the same as being free. Before Genesis follows Joseph into Potiphar's house, chapter 38 turns to Judah and Tamar. The change can feel like an interruption, but it belongs within the family story. Judah separates from his brothers, forms a household among the Canaanites, and has 3 sons. His first son, marries Tamar but dies under God's judgment. The second, Onan, is instructed to provide offspring for his dead brother, yet he deliberately denies Tamar that future while using the relationship for himself. He also dies under judgment. Judah promises Tamar that she will eventually marry his youngest son, Shelah, but he does not keep the promise. Tamar later disguises herself, and Judah sleeps with her without recognizing her. She takes his signet, cord, and staff as a pledge. When her pregnancy becomes known, Judah condemns her, but she sends back those personal items with words that echo the brothers' words to Jacob. Please identify whose these are. Judah recognizes them and admits that Tamar is more righteous than he is because he withheld Shelah. The chapter exposes Judah's failure while preserving Tamar's place in the covenant family. Her son Perez will continue the line that eventually leads to David and, in the opening genealogy of Matthew, to Jesus. It also shows Judah beginning to confess his wrong. Genesis chapter 39 returns to Egypt with almost the same sentence that closed chapter 37. Joseph has been brought down, and Potiphar has bought him. At this low point, the narrator makes the first of several direct theological statements: the Lord is with Joseph. That presence does not immediately release Joseph from slavery. Instead, the Lord causes Joseph's work to prosper within a situation he did not choose. Potiphar sees the results, favors him, and gradually places him over the household. Eventually, Potiphar concerns himself with little beyond the food he eats because everything else has been entrusted to Joseph. The language of blessing reaches beyond Joseph. Genesis says that the Lord blesses the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake, both in the house and in the field. Long before Joseph stands before Pharaoh, the promise given to Abraham is already moving through a member of Abraham's family towards someone outside that family. Joseph has no public authority, yet his presence becomes a source of order and fruitfulness in an Egyptian household. The text then tells us that Joseph is well-built and handsome. Potiphar's wife notices him and commands him to sleep with her. Joseph refuses by speaking first about trust. His master has placed everything in his charge and withheld only one thing, his wife. To take her would betray Potiphar and commit great wickedness against God. Her pressure is not limited to one moment. She speaks to Joseph day after day, and he refuses not only to sleep with her but even to be with her. The power imbalance is severe. Joseph is an enslaved foreigner who cannot simply resign, while an accusation from her will carry far more weight than his denial. One day she catches his garment and repeats her demand. Joseph leaves the garment in her hand and runs out of the house. For the second time in the story, someone uses Joseph's clothing to create a false account of what happened to him. His brothers used the robe to persuade Jacob that Joseph was dead. Potiphar's wife uses this garment to accuse Joseph of entering the house to assault her. She first tells the household servants, using Joseph's Hebrew identity to turn them against him. When Potiphar returns, she places responsibility on her husband as well, referring to the Hebrew servant he brought among them. Potiphar becomes angry and sends Joseph to the place where the king's prisoners are held. Genesis does not record a hearing, a witness for the defense, or any opportunity for Joseph to explain. Joseph has now lost his position for a second time. He lost his place in Jacob's household through his brother's hatred, and he loses his place in Potiphar's household after faithfully refusing his master's wife. If we read this story only as a sequence in which good behavior produces visible success, the prison makes no sense. In prison, the familiar line returns, "The Lord is with Joseph." The Lord shows him steadfast love and gives him favor with the keeper, who places the prisoners under Joseph's care and comes to trust his work. Potiphar's house and the prison begin to resemble one another. Joseph controls either place, yet in both he becomes responsible for nearly everything around him. His administrative wisdom does not suddenly appear in Pharaoh's throne room. Some time later, Pharaoh becomes angry with two high officials, his chief cupbearer and chief baker, and confines them where Joseph is held. These are not ordinary household workers. Their positions bring them close to the king, his table, and his security. The captain of the guard assigns Joseph to attend them. One morning Joseph sees that both men look troubled and asks what is wrong. His question is easy to pass over. He has his own case to grieve, but he pays enough attention to the people under his care to notice a change in their faces. They explain that each has had a dream and that no interpreter is available in the prison. Joseph answers that interpretations belong to God, then invites them to tell him the dreams. He will interpret what they describe, but before hearing any details, he makes the source of his gift clear. The cupbearer has seen a vine with 3 branches. It buds, blossoms, produces ripe grapes, and he presses them into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph explains that the branches represent 3 days. Within that time, Pharaoh will restore the man to office, and he will once again place the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Joseph then makes a personal request. He asks the cupbearer to remember him, show him kindness, and mention him to Pharaoh. He explains that he was stolen from the land of the Hebrews and has done nothing deserving confinement. Trust in God has not made Joseph passive or unable to name injustice. He uses the one connection available to seek his freedom. The baker hears the favorable interpretation and tells his dream. 3 baskets of baked food are on his head, but birds are eating from the upper basket. Joseph again says that the 3 represent 3 days, but the outcome is dreadful. Pharaoh will execute the baker, and the birds will eat his flesh. Joseph does not change the message to make his gift more welcome. On the 3rd day, Pharaoh holds a birthday feast. The cupbearer is restored, the baker is executed, and both interpretations occur as Joseph said. The chapter could now move directly toward Joseph's release. Instead, it ends with a deliberate sentence: the chief cupbearer does not remember Joseph. He forgets him. Genesis chapter 41 opens after 2 full years. We are not told what Joseph thought during that time. The hope for remembrance did not come, and he remained confined until a crisis reached Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh dreams that he is standing beside the Nile. 7 healthy, well-fed cows rise from the river and graze among the reeds. 7 more cows follow, ugly and thin, and consume the healthy animals. Even after eating them, the thin cows look no better than before. Pharaoh wakes, then dreams again. 7 full, good heads of grain grow from one stalk. 7 thin heads, scorched by the east wind, rise after them and swallow the good grain. In the morning, his spirit is troubled. He summons Egypt's magicians and wise men, but no one can provide the explanation he needs. Only then does the cupbearer remember. He tells Pharaoh about a young Hebrew slave who interpreted 2 dreams in confinement. Joseph reaches the royal court under the very description that might seem to disqualify him from entering it. Pharaoh sends for Joseph, and the response is immediate. Joseph is brought quickly out of the pit, shaved, and given fresh clothing before he enters the royal presence. Pharaoh says that he has heard Joseph can interpret a dream as soon as he hears it. This is the opening Joseph might use to advertise his rare ability. Joseph corrects the premise. The answer is not in him. God will give Pharaoh the answer he needs. Joseph said much the same thing to the 2 officials in prison, but the setting is now more dangerous and more impressive. He does not change the source of the gift when the audience changes. After Pharaoh recounts both dreams, Joseph says they carry one message. The 7 healthy cows and 7 full heads of grain represent 7 years of great abundance. The 7 thin cows and scorched heads represent 7 years of severe famine that will follow. The famine will consume the land so completely that the earlier abundance will no longer be remembered. The repetition of the dream also has meaning. Joseph says the matter has been fixed by God and will happen soon. Pharaoh has not merely received information about a remote future. Egypt has been warned while there is still time to prepare. Joseph moves from interpretation to counsel. Pharaoh should appoint a discerning and wise man over Egypt, place overseers throughout the land, and collect 1/5 of the produce during the 7 abundant years. The food should be stored under royal authority in the cities, creating a reserve so the land will not perish during the famine. The proposal reveals more than an ability to explain symbols. Joseph understands organization, delegated authority, storage, timing, and the moral purpose of preparation. The abundance is not treated as permission for careless consumption. It creates a temporary responsibility toward people who will face hunger later. Pharaoh and his servants approve the plan, and Pharaoh asks whether anyone else can be found like Joseph, a man in whom the Spirit of God is present. Since God has shown Joseph what is coming, Pharaoh recognizes him as discerning and wise. The very kind of man Joseph said Egypt would need is now standing before Pharaoh. Pharaoh places Joseph over his house and commands the people to obey him. Only with respect to the throne will Pharaoh be greater. The language supports the familiar description of Joseph as second in command, though Genesis expresses the office through authority rather than giving us a modern job title. The transfer is made visible. Pharaoh removes his signet ring and places it on Joseph's hand, clothes him in fine linen, sets a gold chain around his neck, and gives him the second chariot. Heralds go before him calling out a word often translated, "Bow the knee." The brother whose dreams provoke the question, "Will you rule over us?" now receives authority across Egypt. Pharaoh also gives Joseph an Egyptian name, Zaphenath-paneah, and an Egyptian wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. The precise meaning of Joseph's new Egyptian name is debated. What the narrative emphasizes is his public integration into Egyptian life. He now carries Egyptian authority, enters an Egyptian family, and travels throughout the land he has been appointed to administer. Joseph is 30 years old when he begins this service. Genesis has allowed us to measure the passage of time from age 17, but it has not described every year. Much of his formation happened in ordinary responsibilities that were never public. He learned to manage Potiphar's household, and then the prison before anyone asked him to manage grain for a nation. During the 7 good years, the land produces abundantly. Joseph gathers food from the surrounding fields and stores it in nearby cities. The plan is carried out locally and at such scale that the grain eventually can no longer be measured. The dream has not made human work unnecessary. Because the warning comes from God, careful work becomes urgent. Before the famine, Joseph and Asenath have 2 sons. He names the first Manasseh, connecting the name with God, enabling him to forget his hardship and his father's house. The name suggests that past misery no longer holds him as it once did. He names the second son Ephraim, connecting the name with fruitfulness in the land of his affliction. Egypt is both the place where Joseph has become fruitful and the place of his suffering. Promotion does not require him to rename affliction as something harmless. When the 7 years of abundance end, the famine begins just as Joseph predicted. The shortage extends beyond Egypt, but Egypt has stored food. When the people cry to Pharaoh, he directs them to Joseph. Joseph opens the storehouses and sells grain, and people from surrounding lands come to Egypt because the famine is severe. The movement from the cistern to national authority is real, and Genesis marks it through Joseph's clothing. His distinctive robe is taken from him. Another garment is used to support a false accusation. His prison clothes are changed before Pharaoh, and royal linen is finally placed on him. Each garment tells the public something about Joseph, but none of them fully defines who he is. His responsibilities widen in the same gradual way. Joseph is trusted in Potiphar's house, among the prisoners, and finally across Egypt. His administrative wisdom does not appear suddenly in Pharaoh's court. It has been formed through years of ordinary work in places where he had little control over his own life. The dreams also connect these chapters. Joseph receives 2 dreams as a young man, interprets 2 dreams in confinement, and explains Pharaoh's repeated warning. Yet he consistently says that interpretation belongs to God. His gift becomes more visible, but its source does not change when the audience changes. Christians have long recognized a broad pattern in Joseph's descent and elevation. The favored son is rejected, suffers despite his innocence in the central accusations against him, and is raised to a position through which others receive deliverance. Joseph is not presented as sinless, and every detail should not be turned into a prediction. The connection lies in the larger movement of rejection, suffering, elevation, and life given to others. Joseph also carries forward the promise that Abraham's family will become a blessing beyond itself. Potiphar's household prospers for Joseph's sake, and by the end of chapter 41, Egypt and the surrounding lands can obtain food through the work entrusted to him. The blessing reaches people outside Jacob's family before Joseph has any opportunity to return home. When Genesis says that the Lord was with Joseph, it is not promising an easy life or rapid advancement. God's presence does not keep Joseph out of the cistern, slavery, or confinement. It is seen in steadfast love, moral clarity, fruitful work, and the responsibilities Joseph receives within circumstances he did not choose. Joseph cannot control his brother's violence, Potiphar's decision, his wife's accusation, or the cupbearer's memory. He can refuse to betray trust, notice the people placed in his care, ask for help when an opportunity appears, and give God credit for his gift. Faithfulness does not make every outcome immediate, but it shapes the person who will eventually carry greater responsibility. Return once more to the prisoner being shaved and dressed for Pharaoh. His circumstances change quickly that day, but the man entering the throne room has been formed through years the court never saw. Pharaoh's linen does not erase the cistern or the prison, and Joseph still calls Egypt the land of his affliction. Yet by the end of Genesis chapter 41, the enslaved foreigner has become the governor, opening Egypt's storehouses while the surrounding world grows hungry. If this reading helped you see Joseph's story with greater clarity, subscribe to Bible Slowly and share the video with someone reading through Genesis. You can also tell us which part of Joseph's journey from the cistern to Pharaoh's court stands out most to you.